Every Sunday night my wife went into our son's room. That's how the thirst formed in my mind plane. Factual, impossible to ignore once I noticed it. At my age, routines stand out more clearly than faces. And this one repeated itself with the precision of a clock. Every Sunday night, just after the house settled into silence, she would rise from bed, move down the hallway, and slip into our son's room. The door would close. The light would stay off. And she wouldn't come back for nearly an hour. At first, I dismissed it. Our son moved out years ago. The room had become a quiet space, preserved the way some parents preserve memories without meaning to. I told myself she was just tidying, reminiscing, maybe sitting with old things that mattered to her more than she admitted. Grief wears disguises. Long marriages learn to live with them. But weeks passed. Then months. And the pattern never changed. Sunday nights became heavy for me. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sounds of floorboards down the hall. No music, no phone calls. Just the soft click of the door closing and the long stretch of silence that followed. When she returned, her expression was always calm, almost distant, like she had just finished something important and private. I asked once, carefully. I didn't accuse. I never did. I simply mentioned that she spent a lot of time in that room. She smiled in a way that didn't quite reach her eyes and said she was organizing a few things. Nothing more. Nothing less. The conversation ended there, as many things in our marriage had learned to do. Still, something about it stayed with me. I started noticing details. The way she avoided that hallway during the day. The way she always checked the lock on our bedroom door before leaving on Sundays. The way she seemed more alert afterward, as if she had been holding herself together until something was finished. These weren't the behaviors of someone lost in nostalgia. They felt deliberate. The house itself felt different on Sundays. Quieter, tense. Even the air seemed to wait. I told myself not to speculate. Speculation can rot a man from the inside. But curiosity has a way of turning into resolve when it's fed long enough. One Sunday afternoon, while she was out, I stood in front of our son's door for a long time. I didn't open it. I just stood there, listening to nothing, remembering how that room once held laughter, noise, arguments, life. That night, when she left the bed as she always did, I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I didn't follow her. Instead, earlier that day, I had placed a small camera, nothing obvious, nothing intrusive, on a high shelf in the corner of the room, angled only toward the center. I told myself I wasn't spying. I was protecting my peace. There's a difference, even if it's a thin one. Now lying alone in the dark, my heart beat harder than it should have. I waited. I listened to the door close. I waited some more. When she finally returned to bed, I pretended to sleep, but my mind never slowed. The next morning, while she was in the kitchen, I told her I was going out for a walk. I didn't go far. I came back, closed the door to my study, and sat down in front of the monitor connected to the camera. My hands were steady. My breath was not. I pressed play. And as the footage unfolded, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not because of what I expected to see, but because of how completely unprepared I was for what actually appeared on that screen. It was something I never could have imagined. The moment I pressed play again, I realized the footage was going to be worse than I imagined. It wasn't just curiosity or a secret habit, it was a ritual. She moved with precision, almost military in her attention to detail. Every Sunday night, she wasn't simply going into our son's room. She was performing an operation. The camera caught her sliding the door shut, the faint click of the lock echoing like a gunshot in the otherwise silent house. Then she paused. For a moment, she stood in the darkness, head slightly bowed, as though she were listening to something only she could hear. She didn't glance around, didn't fidget, just stillness. It made my chest tighten. Something in her posture hinted at a responsibility I had never shared, a knowledge I had never been entrusted with. Then she moved toward the old wardrobe. I recognized it immediately, the one we hadn't touched in years. The door creaked slightly as she opened it and pulled out a heavy rectangular box. It was metallic, scratched, and its corners were worn. She set it on the bed and sat down carefully beside it. I noticed the way she exhaled a slow, deliberate release of breath. Like someone preparing for a task that carried immense weight, the camera showed her hands, shaking slightly as she untied the string around the envelopes and papers inside the box. They weren't letters, not really. They were documents, old photographs, some of them yellowed with time, others pristine, obviously newer. I leaned closer to the screen, my stomach twisting. Her face, illuminated by the faint light above, was calm, almost serene, but her eyes betrayed a depth of concentration and a hint of something I couldn't place: fear, maybe, or reverence. One by one, she laid the documents on the bed, carefully arranging them as though she were creating a map, or perhaps a timeline. There were photographs of rooms I recognized, our house, but not as it was now. The furniture was different, the walls bare, the lighting cold. And in some of the images, I saw figures. At first, they were blurry, hard to identify, but then I recognized one in particular. It was me. I froze. My hand hovered over the mouse, unable to move it. I had no memory of any of those pictures being taken. And yet, there it was, my younger self, in rooms I had once walked through, with my son as a small child, or absent entirely, and my wife somewhere in the frame, or perhaps just implied by the focus of her attention. Then she picked up a small notebook from the box. Its leather cover was worn, but well cared for. She opened it slowly, flipping the pages with delicate, precise movements. Inside were dates, names, notes, observations. Some words were underlined, some circled. Others were crossed out, but the correction seemed deliberate, almost obsessive. She paused on a page that seemed particularly important, her finger tracing a line of text as if reading it aloud silently. Every so often, she would reach for her phone and type something, tap the screen, check the time. Her actions were measured, like a performer delivering a long-rehearsed role. But the intensity in her eyes, the small tightness in her jaw, revealed more than just routine. She was guarding something immense and incomprehensible. And I was only now becoming aware of it. I noticed small, almost imperceptible details. The way her hand shook slightly when lifting certain documents. The way her lips moved silently as if reading words aloud to herself. The way she sometimes paused to listen to the silence in the room before moving on. This wasn't nostalgia, not in any sentimental sense. It wasn't reminiscence. It was planning. It was documentation. It was power quiet, meticulous, and terrifying. Hours seemed to pass in minutes as I watched. She worked methodically, sorting, reviewing, cataloging, until finally she leaned back, closing her eyes for a brief moment. Then, slowly she took a deep breath, and a faint, satisfied smile crossed her lips. It was a small thing, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. She had finished something. Something that had been years in the making. Something I hadn't been aware of, but that had been happening right under my nose. I paused the footage again, my hands trembling. I felt dizzy, not from the images themselves, but from the implications. Every Sunday night for years, she had been living in this secret world, orchestrating something I could barely comprehend. And I, her husband, her lifelong partner, had been oblivious, lulled into a false sense of security by sleep, routine, and trust. I leaned back in my chair and ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing. The evidence was clear. She had been hiding something monumental, something carefully constructed to remain invisible to me. And the fact that she had chosen the same time each night, the same isolated location, the same exact method, told me that it wasn't just a habit. It was deliberate. calculated dot, and now I had seen it all, for the first time in decades. The foundation of my life, the life I thought I understood, was cracking. Every Sunday night, my wife had been building something without me. Something that I was never supposed to see. And whatever it was, I knew one thing with certainty. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I would need more than courage to understand what she had been doing. I would need patience, planning, and perhaps the kind of resolve I didn't know I still possessed. But one thing was clear. The next Sunday night, I would have to watch again. And this time, I wouldn't just be a passive observer, because secrets like these never stay buried forever. The following Sunday night, I didn't wait for the usual hour. I prepared. Not with weapons, not with confrontation, but with observation. I made sure the camera was positioned perfectly, angle adjusted, memory card cleared. I set up a small lamp in the hallway that wouldn't illuminate her path directly, but would give me enough light to see shapes through the slightly ajar bedroom door. My heart was racing, my mind focused in a way it hadn't been in decades. She left the bedroom at exactly the usual time, walking silently down the hall in her nightrobe. I held my breath, aware that even the faintest creak of the floorboards could betray my presence. She paused at the doorway to our son's room, glanced over her shoulder as if sensing me, then slid the door open carefully. And just like before, she disappeared inside. The door clicked shut behind her, and the hallway fell into silence again. I waited. I counted the seconds, each one stretching longer than the last. Then I pressed play on the live feed from the camera. There she was, moving with the same methodical precision I had seen before, pulling the metal box from the wardrobe, laying out envelopes and documents, opening the small leather notebook. But this time, I noticed something new. She wasn't alone. A shadow shifted behind her, subtle but unmistakable. A second figure crouched low, moving cautiously, avoiding the direct beam of the camera. My stomach turned. Who was it? My son? I could only see the outline, a tall shape with broad shoulders. The presence of another person made everything far more dangerous. Whatever they were doing here, it wasn't just a personal secret. It was an operation involving multiple people. My mind raced through the possibilities. Could it be a friend? A distant relative? Someone I had never met? The thought was both terrifying and thrilling. The second figure stepped forward, reaching for a set of envelopes. They handled the papers carefully, just like my wife. At one point, they whispered something, a word or phrase too faint to catch. She responded with a nod, her expression unreadable. I leaned closer, trying to catch any sound, any clue that could tell me who this person was. The sense of betrayal deepened, not just that she had been hiding things from me, but that someone else was involved, someone I might have trusted. As the night wore on, I noticed small inconsistencies in their actions. She moved with confidence, while the second figure hesitated slightly, unsure of where to place certain envelopes. A photograph slipped from their hands and fell to the floor. She bent down, retrieved it, and whispered a sharp reprimand I couldn't hear, then handed it back. The person's body language suggested fear, deference, and respect, all directed at her. She commanded this secret world, and he obeyed. I realized that her nightly ritual wasn't just about hiding something. It was about controlling it. Years of planning, careful manipulation, and methodical secrecy had created a miniature empire in our own home, and I had been blissfully unaware. My heart pounded as I processed the implications. What power had she accumulated? How long had this been going on? And why had she chosen my son's room, the space I thought was just a relic of the past, as the epicenter of her work? Then, something happened that froze me entirely. The camera caught a small device, a digital recorder or phone placed on the bed. My wife spoke into it, her voice calm, collected, recording her actions, giving instructions, noting observations. The second figure obeyed every word. And then I saw it. A document with my name on it, carefully circled and highlighted. She was documenting me. Everything I did, every detail, my routines, my absences, the times I slept, the hours I was distracted, it was all noted here. I felt a rush of anger mixed with disbelief. For 12 years, I had been living in her world, participating unknowingly, giving my trust blindly. And she had been building something I was never supposed to discover, something that used me, my identity, my life, as leverage. The weight of it pressed down on me, but it didn't break me. Not yet. Hours passed and I continued to watch. I saw envelopes being sealed, documents being shuffled, notes being taken. I saw her instruct the second figure to remove certain items, to hide them in different parts of the room. I noted every movement, every hesitation, every moment of tension. My mind cataloged it all. I realized that this was more than secrecy. It was a meticulous operation, precise and calculated. And I had a choice: remain a passive observer or become an active participant. As dawn approached, she closed the box, returned everything to the wardrobe, and walked out of the room, leaving the second figure behind for a moment. He slipped out quietly, and the door shut behind him. I rewound the footage, playing it again and again, trying to capture every detail. The longer I watched, the more I understood the scale of what she had been doing. Every Sunday night for over a decade, she had orchestrated this ritual. Training another person, managing documents, recording instructions and cataloging evidence. By the time she returned to bed, I felt a chilling realization: my life, my trust, my family, everything I thought I knew had been meticulously observed, measured, and manipulated. And the operation had survived because I was unaware, passive, and complacent. I had been complicit without knowing it. I made a decision then. I would no longer wait, no longer watch passively. I would act. I would uncover every layer, every secret, and take control of the house, of the documents, of the narrative. I wouldn't confront her blindly, but I would prepare. Every detail I had recorded, every pattern I had observed, became a weapon of knowledge. For the first time in years, I felt power. And I knew that when the next Sunday came, everything would change. The quiet control she had held for 12 years was about to meet the careful patience of a man who finally understood the rules of her secret world. This was no longer just a mystery. This was a war in silence. And I intended to win. The following Sunday, I was ready. Every detail was meticulously planned. The camera was in place, the memory card cleared, and my notes spread across the table. The house felt heavier than usual, the silence thick, almost waiting. She slipped out of bed at the usual hour, her nightrobe brushing softly against the floor, and made her way down the hallway toward our son's room. When she opened the door and pulled out the familiar metal box, I stepped closer than I ever had. She froze slightly, her hands trembling ever so little as she laid out the documents and the leather-bound notebook. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was the first crack in the calm facade she had maintained for over a decade. Her eyes flicked toward me for the briefest moment, and I saw recognition, acknowledgement that her carefully orchestrated ritual was now being observed fully by me. I began handling the papers, cross-referencing dates, aligning documents, reorganizing the envelopes according to what I had memorized from months of careful observation. She watched silently, the tension in her shoulders growing. Every movement she had perfected for years now seemed unnecessary, fragile. She no longer had the quiet authority she had wielded so effortlessly every Sunday night. "Why are you doing this?" she finally whispered, voice low, tight with restraint. "I need to understand," I said, steady and deliberate. "And I need to reclaim my life. All these years, you've built a world I was never meant to see. Now I do. And I am not afraid." Her expression shifted from calm to tense calculation. For a moment, it felt like time stopped. The boxes, the papers, the photographs, everything she had protected so fiercely, now lay open, vulnerable. And I realized that she had underestimated me. Observation, patience, and knowledge were more powerful than secrecy. No matter how meticulous. As the night wore on, the ritual ended. She closed the box, put everything back in the wardrobe, and moved quietly to her room. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. The balance had shifted. The halls were quiet for the first time in years, free from the weight of hidden agendas and secret routines. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the house remained calm but charged. She moved differently, cautiously, aware that her secrets had been exposed, and I moved with measured assurance, knowing that the quiet power of awareness had restored order. Sunday nights were no longer a time of tension or mystery. They belonged to me. And in that stillness, I finally understood the lesson. Secrets thrive in darkness. Deception feeds on ignorance. But even the most carefully constructed plans crumble when faced with observation, patience, and courage. For the first time in over a decade, I felt the house and my life truly mine again.